If you ever find a note waiting for you somewhere you didn't plan to be, somewhere you picked at random, somewhere you wandered into on a whim, and the note is in your ex's handwriting, don't pick it up. Don't read it. Don't even touch it. Because if you touch it, it means it already expected you. If you read it, it means it already knows you're predictable. And if you recognize the handwriting, it's already too late. That's where this started. Not with a phone call, not with a message, not with the usual breakup debris. It started with a note. And the worst part? The note wasn't wrong. Let me take this from the top. My name doesn't matter. You can pretend it's yours if that helps. Because honestly, I think the only reason I'm still breathing long enough to record this is because someone out there needs to hear it. My ex, her name is Mara, was one of those people you only fall for if you're lonely enough to mistake intensity for intimacy. She loved in a way that felt like drowning, beautiful at first, then terrifying when you realized she didn't plan to let you come up for air. We dated for a year and a half. We broke up on a Sunday. She cried with her whole body. I apologized with mine. That should have been the end. But Mara never did endings the way normal people do. She used to say this thing, usually when I tried to leave during a fight. I know you. You're predictable. She'd say it lightly, like a joke, like it was charming that she could anticipate my choices before I made them. I didn't realize how literal she meant it. 3 weeks after the breakup, it happened. I overslept, missed my morning bus, decided, on a whim, to stop at a tiny coffee shop. I never go to the kind tucked between a dry cleaner and a vape store, with a menu board written in pastel chalk and only 2 tables inside. I walked in, bleary-eyed, barely awake, and sitting on the counter, right where my hand landed as I reached for the card reader, was a folded piece of paper. My name written on the outside, in her handwriting. You know how your whole body can reject something before your mind catches up? Like an instinctual recoil? My fingers brushed the corner and pulled back as if it were hot. The barista didn't even look up, didn't say anything, didn't acknowledge the note. Someone dropped this, I said, my voice thinner than usual. He shrugged. People leave stuff everywhere. Did you see who? Nope. He didn't care. Why would he? The note wasn't meant for him. I picked it up, unfolded it. Read 6 handwritten words. I knew you'd miss the bus. My stomach dropped into my shoes because I had missed the bus, and I hadn't told anyone, and I hadn't planned to come here, and there was no reason, none, why she would know I'd choose this place, of all places, at this exact moment, unless I wasn't choosing anything at all. I left the coffee untouched. I walked all the way to work in the cold, hands deep in my pockets, trying to convince myself it was a prank, a coincidence, a sick joke by a friend, maybe. Except none of my friends knew how she curled her Ys, or how she dotted her I's too low, like the pen always hesitated at the last second. Only she did, and she was blocked everywhere. I told myself one note didn't mean anything. I was wrong. It meant everything. The second note came 2 days later. I had a rough morning oversleeping again, though this time I caught my bus. Work was a mess. Everybody irritated. Computers freezing. Printer jamming. One of those days where the whole building feels like it's breathing down your neck. During lunch, I needed to get away from people, just a few minutes of solitude. Quiet. Air that wasn't fluorescent lit misery. So I walked out, crossed the street, turned left, then right, then left again, letting my feet take me wherever they wanted. A random direction, no destination, just movement. I ended up in an alley between 2 office buildings, one of those narrow concrete channels nobody uses except smokers and lost delivery guys. And sitting on top of a trash bin, perfectly flat, held down by a single pebble, was another folded note. I didn't need to open it. I already knew who it was for, but I opened it anyway, because that's what humans do when we're scared. We go toward the fire. Inside, written in that same too familiar handwriting, you always run here when you're overwhelmed. I staggered back so fast, I hit the opposite wall. I had come here before, hadn't I? Months ago. Once, after a fight with Mara, a panic attack. A night when I needed air and space and the hum of distant traffic to drown out the sound of her yelling. I thought I'd forgotten that place. She hadn't. And somehow she knew I'd come here today. Was she following me? Tracking me? Watching me? Hiding somewhere? But the alley was empty. The street was empty. The building windows were tinted. I tore the note into pieces and let the wind take them. Then I told myself the lie everyone tells themselves when something impossible happens. This is still explainable. It wasn't, because the third note appeared inside my apartment. And that's when I realized this wasn't stalking. It was something worse. Something that stepped over coincidence, like it wasn't even there. Something that knew the version of me I hadn't met yet. The third note appeared inside my apartment. That's the part my therapist kept circling back to later. How do you think she got in? Are you sure you locked the door? Is it possible you wrote the note yourself and don't remember? The answer to all three is, I don't know. But I do know this. I live alone. I always lock the door, and I do not write in her handwriting. It was a Wednesday night. The kind of midweek exhaustion where your body moves on autopilot and your brain trails a few seconds behind. I came home, dropped my bag, kicked off my shoes, scrolled my phone as I drifted toward the kitchen. I almost didn't see it. Just a folded square of paper on the counter, next to the sink. Plain, unremarkable. Except, and this is what stopped me, the angle of it was too deliberate. Not tossed, not dropped, placed. My name on the outside. That same handwriting. Something in me went very still. I looked at the door. Bolted, chain across. No scratches, no splintered wood. Window latches, secured. I stood there for a long time, hands at my sides, staring at this stupid, harmless, terrible piece of paper. I don't know how long I might have stayed like that if my phone hadn't buzzed with some random notification and made me jump. I picked it up with 2 fingers, like it might bite, unfolded it. 1 sentence. You're going to open the fridge 3 times. I laughed. It came out harsh and wrong. Okay, I said aloud to the empty room. Okay, that's specific. I told myself I wouldn't do it, wouldn't play along, wouldn't give whoever was doing this the satisfaction. I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. Then I opened the fridge, not because of the note, because I was hungry, because it was habit, because that's what you do when you get home, isn't it? You check the fridge even when you already know what's in there, hoping something new will have spawned in the back between the wilting lettuce and the jar of pickles. I stared inside, closed it, went to my room, changed out of my work clothes. I told myself it didn't count. I went back to the kitchen, picked up my phone, poured water. My hand brushed the fridge handle. I opened it again, not thinking, not meaning to, just automatic. Stared inside again at the same sad shelves, took nothing, closed it. That's 2, I whispered. Suddenly, the apartment felt too bright, too loud, too small. I sat on the couch, turned on the TV, let some forgettable show chatter at me. An ad came on for takeout. My stomach growled. There was nothing in the fridge I wanted. I reached for my phone to order. Stopped. If I ordered delivery, I wouldn't have to. My mind supplied the rest. You're going to open the fridge 3 times. I sat there with the phone in my hand, fighting myself. Don't get up. Don't do it. You are not a puppet. You decide. My throat was dry. I got up anyway. It felt like watching someone else's body. Feet on the floor, fingers on the handle. Door opening. 3rd time. The fridge light hit me in the face, harsh and white. I didn't look at the shelves. I looked at the inside of the door. Another note, taped to the plastic, folded, neat. My knees almost went out. I peeled it off with shaking fingers. I told you, a little smiley face next to it. The same way she used to punctuate texts when she was joking but not really. I sank to the floor, fridge still hanging open, cold air pouring over me, because that was the moment I understood. This wasn't about predicting what I would do. It was about narrowing the possibilities until there was only one thing I could do. You get used to anything, if it happens enough. That's the most frightening thing I've learned from this. The first few notes sent me into full panic mode. Racing heart, tunnel vision, the works. After the 8th or 9th, I stopped hyperventilating. Not because it got less scary, because my body decided it couldn't afford that level of alarm every time. The pattern became clear fast. The notes only ever appeared in places I hadn't decided to go yet. Not your favorite coffee shop, not the alley you always run to, not the bus route or the office or any of the predictable routines. Always the moment I broke pattern. Took a different street, chose a different bench, walked into a random bookstore I'd never noticed before. There, on a shelf at eye level, you always touch the spines as you read the titles. I pulled my hand back like I'd been burned, because I had been about to do exactly that. Run my fingers along the books as I scanned. A different day, a different place. Public bathroom at a movie theater. Middle of the day, half the stalls empty. I pick one without thinking. Close the door. Sit. Look up. On the back of the door, taped at eye level. You pick the third stall when you're anxious. I hadn't even realized that about myself, but she had. A bus stop in a part of town I almost never visit. Late evening, light rain. I duck under the shelter, shaking water from my hair. On the bench beside me, damp but legible. "You won't get on this bus." And I didn't. I stood there, rigid, as the bus pulled up. Doors hissed open. People got on, got off. I watched the driver check the mirror, watched the doors close again, because the alternative, getting on, proving the note wrong, felt like walking into a loaded gun barrel. You want to tell me it's self-fulfilling prophecy? I've told myself that too. The notes predict what I do. I do what the notes predict. Maybe there's nothing supernatural about it. Maybe it's just someone who knows me too well, picking from a menu of likely options, setting little narrative traps and watching me fall in. Maybe. But that theory stopped working the day the note knew where I'd be before I did. I didn't plan to go to the river. That's important. When I woke up that Saturday, I planned to stay in bed all day. Phone off, curtains half drawn, the world held at arm's length. Then my walls started closing in. You know that itch under your skin that says move? I got that. Couldn't shake it. I paced from bedroom to kitchen to living room and back, feeling like a caged animal. My shoes ended up on my feet somehow, keys in my hand, door closing behind me. I told myself I'd just walk around the block. Air, motion, that was all. The river is 20 minutes away. I didn't mean to end up there. I drifted, left where I'd normally take a right, crossed at a different light, followed the sound of distant traffic until it faded into the thicker hush of water. By the time I reached the footbridge, my brain caught up. Why am I here? Wind bit at my cheeks. The current below gurgled and slapped at the pillars. I went to the railing on autopilot, fingers curling around cold metal. Something crackled under my palm. A piece of paper, folded, wedged under the lip of the rail, exactly where my hand landed. Of course, I didn't want to open it. I did it anyway. You tell yourself you didn't mean to come here. The world narrowed. For a second, I wasn't even sure I was standing on solid ground. It felt like being on the edge of a map and realizing somebody had been drawing your route in ink the whole time. You didn't know, I whispered to the empty bridge. I didn't know. I didn't know I was coming here when I left the house. How could you? I stopped, because answering the note out loud felt like exactly what Mara would want. She used to do that. Ask questions with traps in them. Lay conversational landmines. You always, you never. I knew you would. I crumpled the paper and threw it into the river. It hit the surface and disappeared. When I looked back up, there was another note. Same railing, A foot to the left this time, like it had been there the whole time and I'd just chosen the first one first. I stared at it. "No," I said. The note didn't respond. My skin crawled. Slowly, I reached out, peeled this one free. "There's a third one under your left foot." For a second, I didn't move. Then, very carefully, I looked down. Another folded square stuck to the sole of my shoe. I hadn't felt it, hadn't heard it crinkle, hadn't noticed anything when I walked. I lifted my foot like it didn't belong to me, peeled the note off with shaking fingers, and opened it. "You're going to lean over the railing." The railing was already at my waist. My body had already started the motion. I jerked myself back. "No," I said again. I left. Not just the bridge, the area, that part of town. I walked streets I didn't recognize until they started to look familiar, then walked some more. I checked shop windows and bus stops and my own pockets for more notes. Nothing. By the time I got home, I'd almost convinced myself I'd hit the outer limit, that whoever was doing this Mara, or someone pretending to be Mara, could only reach so far, only guess so much. Maybe distance helped. Maybe I could outrun it. I opened my apartment door. A square of white lay on the floor just inside, where the mail would land if it had been pushed all the way under. No envelope, just a folded note. I didn't have to pick it up to know who it was, but I picked it up anyway. "You weren't going to jump," it said. Not yet. That was the moment I realized these weren't guesses. They weren't nudges. They weren't even threats. They were annotations, like someone watching the rough draft of my life and leaving little margin comments for themselves. Not for me, for them. Mara always did love writing in the margins. "You probably think I went to the police." I did. Of course I did. I brought 3 of the notes with me, carefully chosen. Not the worst ones, just the most rationally disturbing. Ones that implied following, not whatever else this was. I sat in a plastic chair under fluorescent lights while a tired officer with a receding hairline read my ex's handwriting and tried to find a crime in it. "So she's leaving you messages," he said slowly, "about what you're going to do." "Yes, and you then do those things." "I don't know if I do them because of the notes, or if the notes are telling me what I was going to do anyway," I said. "That's sort of the problem." He sighed. "Look, we can file a report," he said. "If you have her full name, address, any history of violence." "She shouldn't know where I am," I said. "I blocked her everywhere. I moved 3 months after we broke up. She doesn't have my new address." "People can find people," he said. "Social media, mutual friends. I haven't posted in a year." He looked at me in that careful way people do when they're trying to decide whether you're unstable or just upset. "Maybe it would help to talk to someone," he said eventually. "Professionally, if this is causing you distress." "It is," I said. "It is causing me distress because it is happening." End quote. He gave me a card anyway. Different building, different fluorescent lights, different person looking at me with professional concern. "Do you ever feel like your choices aren't your own?" the therapist asked. I laughed. "Yes," I said. "Constantly." "Sometimes, after a controlling relationship," she said gently, "it can feel like the other person is still dictating your actions, even after they're gone. You might find ways to externalize that, imagining them still watching, still predicting you." "What if they can?" I interrupted. She paused. "Can what?" "Predict me," I said. "Like, actually. Like I'm on tracks and she sees them from above and I don't." "That sounds very frightening," she said. "But feelings of inevitability are often part of depression and anxiety. It doesn't mean someone is actually controlling your life." I didn't bother pulling out the notes, because how do you explain that when you left the house that morning, you hadn't planned to go to the river, and the river still had something waiting there with your name on it? How do you explain that the note on your fridge knew about the 3rd time when you hadn't even decided on the 1st? How do you tell someone that your ex knows where you'll be before you do without sounding like you're the one who's lost touch with reality? For all I know, maybe I have. But if that's true, it doesn't explain the last note. The one that didn't tell me what I was going to do. The one that told me where I was going to die. Perfect. I'll continue the story exactly in your style. Tense, cinematic, psychological horror with creeping inevitability. The final note wasn't like the others. It wasn't folded. It wasn't handwritten. It wasn't even left somewhere I could pretend was random. It was waiting on my pillow when I came home from therapy. My bed was made. I don't make my bed. The note was centered perfectly, like a mint in a hotel I never checked into. Large paper, printer grade, crisp edges, typed, one sentence. Don't look up. I froze in the doorway. The apartment was silent. My keys were still in my hand. My shoes were still on my feet. Don't look up. Every horror instinct screamed that I should not, under any circumstances, obey that note, which is exactly why I didn't move. Because here's the terrible thing this whole situation has taught me. It's not about doing the opposite of the note. It's not about following the note. It's about the note being right either way. It predicted what I'd do if I obeyed. It predicted what I'd do if I disobeyed. "What do you want?" I whispered. My voice bounced lightly off the walls, thinner than usual. I didn't look up. Not yet. I stepped slowly toward the bed. Closer, closer. The temperature dropped a little, just enough that I felt my breath in the air. I reached the foot of the bed and stopped. The note sat there like a commandment. Don't look up. I took a breath that felt like it belonged to someone else. And I looked. Nothing. Just the ceiling. The same ceiling I've stared at during 100 sleepless nights. Flat white paint. A faint crack running across one corner. I let out a shaky laugh. "Oh, fuck you," I said into the empty room. "You don't get to." A second note fluttered down from where it had been taped to the underside of the ceiling lamp. I didn't see it until it fell. It drifted lightly, like a snowflake, landed at my feet. My throat closed. I crouched slowly and picked it up. Typed again. "You always check twice." Then, underneath, "Look up again." My heart kicked painfully. I didn't want to. But the note wasn't asking. It was telling me what I'd do. I looked up again. And this time, there was something. A shadow, not a figure. Exactly. Not a shape you could draw. More like the idea of someone standing above me. Someone watching. Someone leaning over the bed earlier, placing the note. Someone tall enough, or wrong enough, to leave a shape where no light source should leave one. It rippled across the ceiling like heat mirage. My stomach turned. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay, you're here." The shadow didn't move, didn't evaporate, didn't explain itself. It simply was. And then it sank, slowly flattening against the ceiling until it thinned into nothing, as casually as a hand withdrawing from a curtain. Gone. I sank onto the bed. My pulse hammered against my ribs like it was trying to escape. "How do you know?" I whispered to the empty room. "How do you know where I'll be? How do you know what I'll do?" My phone buzzed in my pocket. I flinched so hard, I nearly fell off the bed. A text. Unknown number. It's not hard. Then a second. "You're very predictable when you're scared." I dropped the phone like it was burning me. I stopped sleeping. Not on purpose. Not out of bravado. My body simply refused. Every time I started drifting off, I'd jerk awake with the certainty that a note was about to appear on my chest, or under my hand, or tucked gently behind my ear. I taped the windows. I wedged a chair under the door handle. I shoved towels under the gap. I checked every corner of the apartment every hour. It didn't help. The next note appeared inside the microwave. Typed. Short. Not there. I didn't know what that meant. Not there? Not where? Not me? Another note showed up inside my shoe. Try again. And then, one inside the pocket of the hoodie I hadn't worn in weeks. Warmer. Warmer? Warmer than what? What game was this? The next day, I got the answer. I found a note taped to the bathroom mirror. It wasn't typed this time. It was handwritten. Her handwriting. Not a perfect match, but that's what made it worse. It slanted differently. The letters were rushed, sharper, like she'd been practicing, like she'd been warming up. My breath fogged the mirror as I read it. I'm getting better at this. Below it, a second line. Check the shower. I didn't want to. I stood there, staring at the shower curtain like it was alive. A minute. 2. My pulse was a living thing. Finally, slowly, I reached out and pulled the curtain back. Nothing. Just tile. Just bottles. Just normal. Except, no, a note, taped to the wall. Longer this time. Typed. You were going to check eventually. You always do. I'm not predicting you. I'm following the version of you that already walked this path. I stared at that for a long time. The version of me that already walked this path. What does that mean? I whispered. My phone buzzed. A notification. Calendar alert. I hadn't set one. It read, "Leave now." No explanation. No destination. Just now. Every cell in my body went cold. Because unlike the other notes, the ones that watched, annotated, anticipated, this one wasn't telling me what I would do. It was telling me something I hadn't considered. There's a version of this story where I leave now, which means there's a version where I don't, and she knows both. I grabbed my coat. I didn't even lock the door behind me. I bolted down the stairs, out of the building, into the icy night air. My breath came in ragged bursts. Street lamps glowed like halos. Snow flurried sideways. The world felt thin, breakable. Where do you go when the person chasing you knows your destination before you do? Where do you run when your ex is waiting at the end of every possible path? I picked a direction at random. Left, just left. My phone buzzed again. A new alert. This one wasn't from any app I recognized. It simply said, "Wrong one." My heart almost stopped. Another buzz. Try again. Another. Warmer. My legs nearly buckled. She wasn't predicting where I'd go. She was steering. She knew every path I could take, every fork in the road, every choice I would make, every choice I wouldn't. And she was guiding me toward one specific outcome, one destination, one place I'd reach eventually. Unless I could take a path I wasn't meant to take. A path the notes didn't expect. A path I didn't expect. I stood in the middle of the snowy sidewalk, chest heaving, light flickering overhead. And I understood. The only way to escape someone who knows your future is to become someone who doesn't. Someone unpredictable. Someone unrecognizable. Someone who would terrify even her. Someone who doesn't follow any path, not even their own.